All right, welcome to Alabama Gristmill. We're back. We kind of been off our schedule a little bit, and do apologize for that. We're still going to be doing as many as we were talking about, but we got a little under the weather this past couple of weeks. I've been trying to get back into shape, and I think we're good. Both of us actually. My co-host Donna Causey, say hello.
Hello, I'm glad to be back.
I think the main thing that's getting me a lot of these allergies and this southern weather and everything has been kind of catching up with me. You probably can hear my voice a little bit. It's just us doing the podcast. We're just a small operation, so sometimes we get behind the ball a little bit, but we're back up. We have a big milestone we reached as far as the patron program, and we've hit our goal of 250 patrons.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, the good thing about reaching the goal is all the patrons, we're going to be sending a link to download a copy of the Alabama Footprints first book, called Exploration, Alabama Footprints Exploration.
That's
right.
They
can
That's
download that book. And it's kind of nice because that also ties into our story today, because it takes place in a lot of the exploration period of Alabama. So the story today we're going to go over is a story of an ancient lost Native American town called Abika. Did I say that right?
I think it is. Right? It's also called Abeka, at times, but I think the main name is Abika. Abihka is the way it's spelled. I don't know if we're pronouncing it right or not.
Well, if any listeners out there want to correct us on that, I'm sure that we would love to be corrected on it and get that right. I don't know the
Native American language real well, and I'm probably really messing them up sometimes, so I'm sorry.
Yes, we try our best, but if you got any corrections, let us know. You can always comment on our Facebook page. You can find the Alabama Pioneers Facebook page. Be one of the easiest ways, or email us at info@alabamapioneers.com, and we can kind of get those corrected out there. Any new other message you got. But this is a lost Native American town called Abeka, is what I'm going to go with. And it has a close ties to a small town actually in Henryetta, Oklahoma. And Henryetta, Oklahoma, also being a small town, it has a lot of people you might be familiar with, one being the quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman's from there, and a bunch of other actors like Alice Ghostley, who was in Grease, Jeremy Hayes, Phantom of Opera, and Supreme Court Justice Stephen W. Taylor. So there's a lot of celebrities and famous people that come out of this town, this one small town, and how it ties back into this town that we've lost in Alabama from the early exploration days. So I'll let you go ahead and get into the story.
Okay,
and tell us a little bit about this town of Abeka.
Yeah, it's not much that people know about it, but luckily we have some records from the Native American agent at the time, Benjamin Hawkins, who described it and different maps and different things. There were 5 tribes that had to go on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma, and the Muskogee, which is really another name for the creeks too, is the Muskogee. They're known as the Muskogee Creek Confederacy. And they settled in this area, this little town of Abeka, and even larger. They were settled in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama, and it was huge. Abeka was the mother town, and it had about 50,000 people, believe it or not. According to Wikipedia, the Muskogee Creek Confederation, all that remains of them now is a porch band of Creek Indians in Escambia County. Most of them left to go to Oklahoma. They were forced to leave there and travel on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma in the early 1830s. But there were a few of them that did remain, and they stayed here, but they had to become U.S. citizens as a condition of remaining. But luckily, they were kind of unusual. They stayed together and kept their culture together and their communities together a lot. The Porch Band of Creek Indians is the only federally recognized tribe of Native Americans in Alabama. The state recognized 8 other tribes, but the Porch Band of Creek Indians is the only federal recognized, and that's according to Wikipedia. Now, if anybody, I'm not sure about that, so if you've got a problem with it, please let me know.
Yeah, because anybody can edit those Wikipedias. It's a pretty good source.
I worry when I get something from Wikipedia, and that I'm not sure of. So if you know more information about that there is another one that's recognized federally, let me know, because I'd love to know about it. Abika had about 50,000 people, and they were huge, and they were part of the powerful 16th century chiefdom of Coosa, which took, like I said, part of Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. And they were doing fine and doing quite well until DeSoto came along, and the Europeans started coming into the community, and they started to get diseases, and they had many fatalities from that because they were not immune to what the Europeans were bringing over. Of course, there was a lot of fighting, too, that went on, and it just disseminated the Muskogee Creek Confederacy down to a small number. They wound up just south of Tallahatchie Creek in what is now Talladega County, Alabama, the few that were remaining. And then they existed there for a while, but like I said, they had to leave with 1830 Trail of Tears. The first record they found of this tribe was on a map around 1704 that we can know for sure. So we really think they were even further back. They're characterized as Upper Creek Indians. Most of the ancient Creek customs, like punishing adultery and regulation Americans, can be traced back to this town, believe it or not. That's a lot of history. One of their things they had was a man wanted to get married. He had to build a house, make his crop, gather it in, make a hunt, and bring home the meat. And then there was a ceremony where he gave all this to his wife, or presented it to his wife in a ceremony. And they were then married. And the woman was bond to him at that point, which was pretty neat. You know, you had to show you could make it and provide for her before you could take another woman as your wife.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that if that tradition goes all the way back to you're talking about the 16th century in the Coosa, I think that's pretty neat. Anyway,
very neat.
The town Abeka is one of the oldest in the whole nation, one of the oldest Native American towns in the whole nation, according to Benjamin Hawkins, a Native American Indian agent at the time. He had visited some of them, and he described what went on a lot. And he said they didn't have fences and only a few hogs, horses, and cattle. And they were very attentive to the white people who lived among them, in a friendly relationship. And they were particularly nice to the white women. I guess it kind of goes back from the way they were, their own wives, the way they had to present and show that they honored them, by doing for them before they even got married. And it kind of
so the women were kind of more of a cherished and respected class.
Right, which you don't hear that all the time, and that tradition came down from way back, so that's pretty neat. Then they didn't even take part in the Creek Uprising in 1813, but they still were forced to leave Alabama. In Oklahoma, when they got there, they established their first ground square a few miles from Eufaula, Oklahoma. There's a lot of that. People will recognize that name, Eufaula. That's a town in Alabama. A city in Alabama now. It's large.
Yeah. So basically they were forced to leave Alabama on the Trail of Tears.
Yes, when all the Native Americans were forced out of Alabama.
And then which resulted in them ending up in Oklahoma.
That's why, it was called the Indian Territory at that time. But anyway, they settled first in a little place called Eufaula, and then they moved a little bit further west, but both places are gone now that they first settled. They just abandoned them, but they're still there. And most of them are settled around Henryetta, the town we were talking about, Henryetta, Oklahoma. And so you might find some small towns around Henryetta, Oklahoma that have the same names as Alabama names. There's something that I found was really unique because I was able to find 2 films that I could show on the website. After the removal to the Indian Territory, they established a ceremonial stomp dance ground, which they called Abeka. There's that name again. You can go to the website and you can see the ceremonial stomp dance in Oklahoma and the one they're still doing it in Alabama. And so you can see both and compare the 2 different ones. So if you want to go to the website, a lot of this information I'm giving you is on the website and more extensive, so you can kind of find more information.
You can actually see the actual the ceremonial stomp dance on both sides.
Both of them. They still do them. Well, I guess today when they were doing the film at that time, they were still doing them.
Well, in this generation, at least.
Yeah, this generation, the modern version of it. So, but if people in Henryetta, Oklahoma, have a strong connection with Alabama in that, and they can, realize that their ancestry goes way back before DeSoto even came to Alabama. There may be, when you're doing your ancestry and looking back, you may go very far back in it if you're a Native American in Henryetta.
Especially if you're traveling through Oklahoma and you're like, hey, there's a Eufaula, there's all these different towns.
A lot of different little towns in Oklahoma around Henryetta, like those connect with the Coosa River in Alabama because they kind of followed the river and set up little villages and towns, and sometimes they became big cities in Alabama. I don't know how big they are in Oklahoma because I haven't been there, but people from Henryetta may be able to tell us that. Anyway, what I thought was even more unique, in 1940, when they dedicated Alabama's World War Memorial Building, which houses the Alabama Department of Archives and History today, five representatives from the Oklahoma different tribes came to Alabama and brought their banners because it was on Flag Day that was going on, and they were the first ones here, so their banners went up first, and they explained what they meant at the dedication ceremony. Since they were the first residents of Alabama, they deserved to be seen
and recognized as the first. Yeah, right. And I imagine those flags still flying there.
I haven't seen. I don't know. They're probably still there. I don't know. That's
they're
another
still
thing.
Flying or not.
I'd love to have some more information about this. This is just some facts and information that I gleaned over the time. And like I said, go to the website and you can get more information and comment on it there. You don't have to necessarily write me, but you can put it comments and I'll add to it. And sometimes I'll add those comments to the story. It's depending on who's sending them and what the information is, if it extends the story. Even if it's controversial, even if it's something different than I wrote, I like to put both opinions up. People can decide for themselves of the truth of what's going on. When you're talking with something about that long ago, there are distortions and images and different different information provided, so it's best to read it all.
Well, the thing I like about the story is how it ties in, the history of Alabama and how the culture of that was transferred to this small town in Oklahoma.
Right.
And, and still some of those traditions are there today. So from one of the oldest towns in the nation, Native American towns in the nation, and that was here in Alabama.
Exactly. And there's so much history that we get little glimpses of it here and there when we do our research. We don't get the full story most of the time, but we get more and more of it from people talking about, my ancestor told me this and mine told me that. You piece it all together, you get a better and fuller picture of what's going on.
And there's so much Native American history in Alabama. I mean, this is an example. This story is a great story about that. But we have many more on the website, and there's many more stories we're going to go into the podcast as well. Just little, vignettes of history and how, the Native American history of Alabama ties into the culture today.
Yeah, sometimes we just gloss over it. You think about it. They were here a long time before we were here, and they have personal stories, too, that I love to hear about. So, the more you can write.
And all the different names of the towns and rivers and, the regions, it's a lot of times you don't realize what they are when you drive past them or you're going through those areas. And you're like, oh, well, that's where that name comes. It's just not a strange name. It's actually, these were people that lived here, that had a culture, had a life, and it just brought a lot of the original, I guess, culture of Alabama.
Right.
For lack of a better word, I mean.
Right. They made Alabama what it is today just as much, even, and they were here, you're talking of centuries before.
Yeah, it was more of a
Alabama
foundation.
became a state in 1819. We're talking, in the 1600s with DeSoto and everything, and still people are descended from that heritage that are living in Alabama now. So we need to know more about that history. We have so little that's available on the Native Americans of Alabama because they had to leave. And they're in a lot of it's in Oklahoma.
Yes, and we by doing the research you found, and you can bring some of that back, which has been what you're trying to do.
Yeah, like I said before, I'm trying to just give you a glimpse and look further. I encourage you to look further and deeper, and it's just little pieces.
Try to shine a light on it, and then and you'll find, as we find, is very interesting, is all the different cultural elements that you'll run into and see. And we'll talk about, and you can see in the book, I believe you have one of the Alabama Footprints books, as we've got it, is about the Native American, specifically about that. Which one's that one? The latter ones, okay. Mm-hmm. So so you can get those books, and like we've always said, those books are available on Amazon.com, and you can get those there. That was a great little glimpse of some history from way back history, I guess.
Way back, yeah. When you're talking about one of the oldest Native American tribes in the whole nation, that is way back. That is way back.
And doing the research, and mainly for the notes for this podcast episode, we came across there's actually a Trail of Tears motorcycle ride coming up in coming up to September, on September 15th. And it's actually their 25th anniversary ride, and it'll be in the northern Alabama area. You can go to their website. We'll have it linked in the podcast. But it's kind of a complicated website, so we'll bear with alabama-tn-trailoftears.net. Wow. And but you can click through your podcast player. You'll see it in the notes of this podcast, and we'll have it on the website as well.
There's a link to it with the stories.
Yes, and if you're a motorcycle rider, it'd be an interesting thing, a fun weekend out, and to take that ride. So that ties into the story and the history.
They follow
today.
the trail,
They do.
Through Alabama.
I believe it goes through Bridgeport, Huntsville, and Waterloo, and those towns, and they stop in those different towns and everything. So, but you can click on that and see that, check that out, and see a little history, and take a nice ride with some friends in the northern part of Alabama. So,
in the fall of this year, when things are really looking pretty.
Once my allergies get cleared up, I really like it. But right now, it's we're getting better. Wait till I get better. Again, we really want to thank all the patrons out there. It helps us support this and keep this going, keep some research going, and keep these podcasts, keeps the website up, the whole thing. So really appreciate it out there. If anybody else would like to join, we do. You go to the website, hit the "I want to be a patron" button.
Hey, we better, have we mentioned where the website is? AlabamaPioneers.com. We say go to the website, but we don't.
For the new listeners, the website is AlabamaPioneers.com. Pretty simple.
I got to thinking about that one day. We don't necessarily always mention
that's right. So
and the books are Alabama Footprints, so it kind of throws you off a little bit. I guess
it's the way it worked out for us. And, like I said, we're a small operation here yet. So just trying to keep everything going. And we do have another goal we've set up on the patron program. And it's once we get 500 patrons, at that point, we'll go ahead and we'll be sending out the book, Vinegar of the Four Thieves, which is recipes and tips from our research in the past history of Alabama.
Oh, yeah. They really go, they're old recipes and old tips and stuff like that, things that your great grandmothers knew and talked about.
It's like household tips and things like that, and recipes.
And things how to paint things, how to do, how they manage. You'll appreciate what they had to go through.
And we don't want to lose that either, because there's a lot of good tips in there that you can kind of twist and apply to today, or recipes that you can apply to today. If you want to cook something the old-fashioned way, this is the recipes in there to do it.
And also, if you're into the green environment, doing things naturally, there's a lot.
Eco-friendly? Very eco-friendly.
Well, except for things like using ammonia for everything in the world.
All but drink ammonia back then.
No, back then, the castor oil, the ammonia, and all that kind of stuff. It's amazing. There are good things, but you got to take it you got to remember, time has taught us lessons. We got to be careful.
Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this episode up. And just, again, thanks for being listeners out there. Thanks to all the patrons. And we'll see you next time on Alabama Gristmill. We'll let Red Foley play us out with the Alabama Jubilee. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Dancing round on his toes, throws away his crutch and hollers, hey, let her go, oh honey, hey.